I'm here with Barbara Stein, and we're having brunch with Bari in Barbara's office, which, does this guy have a name?
His name is, I'm sorry we had to not open because we had to close.
Oh, really?
It's the Camelot guy.
Oh, gosh. So was Camelot the show that was about to open?
That was the show that was about to open right before the pandemic. It looks like his head got bashed in, so I think I'm going to leave it that way because he's still sorry that he had to close.
Well, I love your office so much
Thank you.
because it's exactly what I would picture a producer's office to be like. So you were just telling me this fascinating story of how Actors Playhouse came to be. And I've never met your husband, but you were saying that he was a theater lover from the time he was a child, growing up, seeing it. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Do you mind telling the story?
No. Larry's from Philadelphia. And he loved theater, and he had always gone to the pre-Broadway shows. That's where they all started out, the Theater League, before they went to New York years ago. And he just grew up loving theater culture, music, everything we didn't have when I grew up down here in Miami.
Uh-huh.
So he just had the desire to always enjoy culture wherever we went, and even in Miami at the time, because we were starting to create some great cultural experiences here.
How did you meet, you and him?
At the University of Pennsylvania. I'm from Miami, he's from Philadelphia. He was a dental student then.
And what were you focused on?
Well, I graduated from the dental hygiene school and continued my education in the college at Penn. And I always say I got my RDH and my MRS. It was a great combo.
Were you always in charge of things and a leader?
Always a leader. In high school, I was even outstanding teenage citizen of Dade County way back when. I always was a doer, and I always made friends easily and found a way to make things happen. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed, making a difference.
Yeah.
And I never thought too much about it. I just did it. I think like you're probably that way, right, Bari?
Yeah.
Okay, we're two
Like you were
birds.
saying, it's
like
just
flock
kind
together.
of in the genes. You're either made that way or
Probably, and but Larry was practicing dentistry in a strip mall for years, 50 years he practiced there. He recently retired, and one of his patients, Mike Brown, was the president of Wameco. People in Miami know Wameco was the major movie theater down here, like the Lowe's chain and the Regal. They were the family-owned business down here. And there was a movie theater they had bought in the mall where Larry practiced dentistry. And it was sort of, a baby of theirs that they inherited but wasn't doing business. He said, I'm selling this lease while he was getting his teeth done. And my husband goes, without me knowing, by the way, don't sell it. I'm going to buy the lease. We have to bring culture to South Florida. Because at that time, we didn't have the smaller theaters and the emerging arts organizations in Miami or in Broward or Palm Beach. And we didn't even have the big performing arts centers. And
it was before the Arch, it was before Broward.
Oh, yeah. It was 34 seasons ago, 1988. So by the end of the week, the lease that was almost sold to somebody else became the lease that the Steins bought and began a theater company without knowing too much about how to do it, except just to keep rolling forward and find the resources. They came out of the woodwork.
How did you start? How did you even know where to begin?
I started for this first 6 months. It was run as a movie house. So I started selling popcorn to 99-cent moviegoers. I did not like doing that at all. And then as that was happening, we were evolving how to make it into professional theater and a nonprofit organization. So there was a lot of legal work. We started off with 11-piece orchestras and equity casts, and it was quite a whirlwind experience, I might tell you.
I'll bet.
Quite.
And you said it was a 2-screen movie house.
Right.
Did you, you had to take the wall down?
No, we didn't. We used 300, it was a really great little space. One space was for main stage, and eventually we evolved our children's theater within about, I'd say, a year and a half. We evolved our children's theater. So we opened up the theater with Man of La Mancha in Kendall. We also opened up the theater with Man of La Mancha here at the Miracle Theater.
Oh, that's nice.
And I'm wondering when we'll be doing it again. maybe the year I retire, we'll do it again. Who knows?
Markers.
And right. But anyway, it was a great show because it really drew the people in. Okay, and then the next show, and we had a good subscription base back then too, but we were in a strip mall and people weren't sure, is this a professional theater? Larry and I had helped out in community theater with different organizations, so the identity of whether we're professional or community with our names behind it was confusing.
Yeah.
And but the next show was A Funny Thing Happened to the Way the Forum, and a funny thing happened. Dave Arisco was pseudoless in the show.
Amazing.
And as we were directing the show, the director resigned. He took his cast with him that he had cast,
no.
and Dave Arisco took over. And the history is he's been the artistic director with the theater for 34 seasons now too. And then a guy named Earl Malding was in our first show. He was a muleteer. And he also was in the second show for A Funny Thing Happened with the Forum. And he had some experience doing children's theater up in the middle of the state. So he was brought on board to start our children's programming. And then Hurricane Andrew came. And this is in our 7th year at the theater.
And you're in Kendall.
Kendall, right there where it hit. And it obviously devastated the theater. It devastated everybody who worked at the theater, our homes, my husband's business. I think that the support for that national disaster was so strong, and cultural support, financial support, and the support of the community that was making so much money rebuilding the community to help us with in-kind services to develop. We were so fortunate, an organization. And so we managed to get on our feet and struggle through bringing audiences in. Now, we were probably pretty much the only theater around open in Miami-Dade County, and then we started to do large musicals. Crazy as it sounds, but it established our niche in large musicals, and it's definitely David Arisco's niche in directing. And so we started to bring people in, believe it or not, from Broward to come see theater as they walked over planks over water in the Kendall Mall. And then the kids' theater started to evolve because people, like any tragedy, you want to get out of the tragedy and you want to be whole again. So people wanted the experience. So we muddled through that for 2 years.
Wow. Wow. And then what happened? How did this building come to be?
Well, one day I got a call from John Fullerton, the architect's office, and they wanted to come out to see our theater to learn how to build a stage for the Coral Gables Youth Center.
Okay.
So they're out looking at the theater, and at the same time, we had interest to buy out our lease. So with knowing that and not knowing where we're going, and these people are coming out from the city, I brought them into my office and I say, how would you like to see your name in lights? And I needed to start the ball rolling of who is interested to help us create a partnership. And simultaneously, I was notified that in order to look into other spaces, in particular the Miracle Theater, I should contact the city. And I did. I contacted the development office. And Kathy Swanson was the development director at that time, and she was in my office within 3 days.
Was the building vacant?
No, it was still a movie theater. It was a fourplex movie theater. Now, the Miracle Theater, this iconic building, was built in 1948 as a showcase movie theater with one screen, okay? In the 80s, they converted it to a fourplex movie theater. Now, the same people, of course, who owned the lease in Kendall owned the Miracle Theater. This was our prime location. So at the same time, and our good fortune, the city's good fortune, the community's good fortune, they also had a lease on the Miracle Theater for big box retail. And a Dan Marino restaurant. I mean, it was a legitimate lease. It was just ready to be signed. So working fast, they stopped action on the lease, and I give them so much credit because they retained the movie theater that was probably losing tons of money for a good 8 months while we negotiated our long-term relationship with the city of Coral Gables.
Wow.
So Actors Playhouse has a very long-term lease, and it was our obligation for the good lease arrangement we had to actually design the place, demolition it, build it, fund it, implement it, and manage it.
Wow.
And over the 7-year period, we built it into a 3-stage professional theater, and constantly every year upgrading it and doing more to it, technically and physically, and growing the programming and using the space for the community. It was a challenge.
So right now you're preparing for On Your Feet.
Well, we're preparing for On Your Feet, but before On Your Feet, we're opening up Middletown. And that is going to be a great production in partnership with the New York Broadway producers G4. And it has a wonderful celebrity cast, and we're very excited about that. It's the first time, we've brought in celebrities of name recognition to the theater. It's been part of our strategic plan. We usually send people to Broadway who become known, and that's one of the wonderful things about a regional theater like ours, because you can start young people off in the classes and then into our musical miracles with the talented ones. They get trained, then they go in, they work in the children's professional theater, which is non-union, and then every once in a while somebody's really cast well in the main stage, but they move on to other regional theaters, eventually getting their equity card. We have actors who've moved on from here, working here, who've been nominated for Tonys many times.
It always amazes me, and we should eat. This is donated by Crema.
Delicious.
Isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think they're right across the street from Actors Playhouse. And last time I was here, many members of your staff said that they frequent Crema, and I encourage our viewers to as well. I've been in theater since I was a kid, and I've become increasingly aware of the difficulties of producing, and there's always a step that I'm a little wary to take in terms of letting people know too much, because on one hand, I want to share with people how it actually gets done. You and I have had now a number of conversations about scene shops and how a play gets built. And I can't tell you, I'm sure the number of people who say to me, "Oh, I never thought about that."
I spend a lot of time here in the evening to greet the guests. It's somewhat the reward. It's the opportunity to tell people what's happening. It's the opportunity to get people more engaged with the philanthropy needed for the theater. And I'll start my day at home now, working at home because of COVID, at 6 o'clock, and I'll end it at 6 at night, nonstop. Yeah. And here I may be 9:30 to 8:30 every day, and then greet the guests. Yeah. It's a laborious job, and if you do it right, everybody has to take that extra step looking for perfection, because one little mess up, can make the difference.
Theater is hard because it's live, obviously, but it's not a movie. You can't replicate it many times, and it's human. So for me, it's like really important that a human face and a human presence is there when the party's happening, when the audience is there.
There's so much that goes into it. First of all, we both deal with union contracts and union actors, and dealing with a union opens up a whole different ball of wax when you're making things happen in a theater. It's actually what held up theaters across the country because of COVID, because the union is constantly revamping their rules and for the good purpose of protecting their actors. We had opened the theater a year ago with the Children's Theater because the actors are professional actors but not union professional. But the challengers are still in front of us, and we both are going to share this challenge, is how to bring back our audiences. And but talking about something you mentioned about how you always want to know how protective you have to be about what you do, and you do. I'll tell you, you do. Everybody is not, working in the same plane. Yeah. But sharing is a really remarkable opportunity, and when you share, you somewhat protect yourself anyway, because nobody wants to be a copycat. Right. But you sort of share because you can make things so much better and collaborate.
Yeah. No, I think the reason that I mentioned that really had more to do with donors and funders. Yeah. That on one hand, I want everybody to know how these regional theaters work. And so I'm constantly telling the story from multiple different lenses of why it's a nonprofit, why it's not a commercial theater, why a theater company is more than just the 6 or 7 plays that it does in a season, how a production gets built, what everybody on a team and a staff does, you know, how a rehearsal happens, how a season is chosen. You know, I'm like constant. But sometimes when I get into the real nitty gritty of, say, how important it is for a theater company to have its own scene shop, for instance, sometimes I see people's eyes glaze over because I'm ruining the magic for them. They don't really want to know how it became magic on stage. Do you know what I mean? And so that's really what I was talking about.
I got
of
you.
like,
okay, I haven't found that. I think I have more people that would like to know.
Yeah.
But I don't share it. For example, our scene shop is down in a very dangerous part of town. I mean, they can't even work there at nighttime because it's so dangerous, and it costs us a lot of money.
Right.
Okay, and so we have all of our equipment there, and it goes up every year, and it becomes even more important property because it's right near Wynwood. So people need that warehouse space. So, but that warehouse is critical because we build enormous big sets and then bring them on the stage here. Over the years, your company's done things differently, and you're trying to change that pattern.
Yeah,
congratulations!
But people probably don't know, and please eat. Sorry, I'm making...
No, it's okay.
People probably don't know that Gable Stage, perfect example, right, of something that people don't know because they're not there to see it, of how Gable Stage has built a show on stage in real time with the play rehearsing around it. And of course, the benefit to that is that you never have to be, for people who don't know, often plays are rehearsed in rehearsal rooms with tape on the floor for where the set pieces will be and rehearsal furniture. But they had the luxury, in many ways, of rehearsing on the real set, but in basically a construction zone, you know, as it was built. But the beauty of that is Joe could say, I want that door a little to the left, you know? And suddenly the door was a little to the left. But what does that mean for a calendar? What does that mean for the space itself and just having sawdust and the lights? You know? What does that mean for how people work? And in that case, it was people working overnight, you know? And a very specific team of people that would be brought in to make this happen, show after show after show after show. And me being totally unfamiliar with that way of operating, I was like, well, what do other theater companies do in town to build their sets? And it's people don't know, too, that it's not just about building the sets. It's about storing the sets then, not the full sets, although you probably store some of your more...
You know something interesting? We have to sadly break our sets down and throw most of it away.
Yeah.
We save the metal because we re-weld it,
Yeah.
but we don't have room to store it.
Right.
We store most of our children's sets because we repeat those, and we store some elements of big sets.
Right.
Mamma Mia's being stored.
Yeah.
Because hopefully someday we'll do that again. It
Yeah.
was very popular for us.
Of course.
But there's hardly room to store it.
Yeah.
And I think the rats will probably get to it before we can
Before you
use
get
it
to do
again
it, right.
down in Little Haiti where the warehouse
Right.
is. But I have to tell you how many times I've gone to Gable Stage, and I envied you for having the size stage you have, because I can't begin to tell you
Yeah.
what it costs to
Right.
build a set for our main stage.
Right.
And so it balances itself, believe it or not.
Someone told me a long time ago, and this is probably interesting to somebody, that it was the person who was telling me this had run a theater that was a real 3/4 thrust, and now he was running a proscenium house, and he was saying how much cheaper it was to be running the 3/4 thrust space because you could just put a window down and call it a room.
Yeah.
But in a proscenium house, you have to build 3 walls. And that just always stuck with me. It's definitely something that people probably don't really think about.
Well, you know, artistically, you never want to ruin the show by not going the full gamut that you can for a set. I mean, our budget for On Your Feet is probably close to $650,000.
Oh my God!
And I can
Wow.
tell you, that's without in kind. Okay.
Right.
And I can tell you, if anybody else were doing that show, And we will do it in a great way. Believe me, we're not going to compromise on Gloria's show in her hometown.
Right.
But if anybody else were doing this show, they would be spending at least double to do the same thing. It may not have many more elements that will look better.
Right.
We're just very good and conscientious about how we do these things.
Right.
But it's daunting.
And another thing that people probably don't know is, so for a show like that, how many people are in the cast?
Well, we're hoping to keep it at 22.
Okay.
And then we have to gauge how many equity and non-union, because we're allowed a certain portion.
Right.
But you have to look at the talent, and you have to look at the dancing capability and the choreographer's decision and the director's decision.
Right.
And
how many people you're bringing in?
How many people you bring in. Then you have to house them.
Right.
And then you have to provide cars.
Yep.
And all these things add up into...
Yes, quite an operation.
Yeah, quite an operation. And we have been fortunate over the years to have sponsors for housing, and we rent an apartment annually for that.
I imagine that the hope must be that some of those people graduate into these main stage shows.
It doesn't necessarily happen that way, but it has. I mean, we don't look at it that way. We're training people because of the opportunity to develop their skills.
Yeah.
Not just, I mean, skills are developed through arts training for leadership and self-confidence.
Working with others.
It's the skills we teach are not necessarily you're going to do a rah-rah show. I mean, there are camps that do that in programs, and they're great programs. We lose a lot of kids to those programs intermittently. Ours are developing great, worthy skills of a real wholesome development of the individual, not just theater skills. I just can't get it out of my blood. I mean, I just can't stop the creative end of doing things and matching things up.
Yeah. And
they hate listening to me because they think, our team thinks in the artistic area, rightfully so, that the show is what the most important thing is. And I said, you've got to create the setting for the show and the relationship for the show and the opportunity for people to buy in the fun, especially in Miami. You know, developing audience in our hometown is really not easy.
That's what I've heard.
It's not easy because most people aren't brought up with live theater. I mean, a lot of people in the Gold Coast areas are retirees or people that came from New York, from New Jersey, from Boston. The West Coast, they have the Midwesterners that have come down and changed their residences. But we have a very unique young community, very diverse, and it's just one of those steps in progress that have to happen as they engage in and become part of. And our programming is geared for that. It really is. We look hard for that kind of a show in every season that could bring that audience in, and it does.
Can you tell me some numbers, like how many, pre-COVID, how many people are you serving a year?
Well, we're serving here a year with our children's theater and our rentals about 150,000 people a year, and come through the theater, because we rent the facility to global groups and conventions and screenings.
How do you have time to do that?
Because you make time, because it brings in new people.
Right.
It's revenue for the theater. It's part of our operation. It's a couple $100,000 of revenue of our operation. And it's very important to get that money and to make this place useful.
So if you were to give me one piece of advice about what my first priorities at Gable Stage should be, and a piece of advice about Miami Coral Gables and my role in it, what would that be?
Well, I have to compliment you. To answer your first question, I can't imagine anybody who's done it better.
Oh.
You've come into the community, you've met everybody, you've established yourself as the artistic director.
But I haven't produced one play yet.
But you've hired the people that are necessary to make things, the wheel turn, okay? And you've done this very well. And you've got a team going there for you and working on your behalf. That's the first step. You've created a relationship with a very nice board of directors. I know people on the board, and I think they'll be supportive of you. And you're handling all the COVID issues by looking at what you can do to manage this small space and produce. And you picked a season that's very appealing. You've created marketing partnerships, and you've come into with a great fundraiser and a great idea using that beautiful Biltmore Hotel. I mean, I give you a lot of credit. And the audiences in Miami, we talked a little bit about them being uniquely diverse.
Right.
And your plays are not always that play that appeals to a large Hispanic community.
Right.
But you're training, as we all are training audience to support, and you've got to appeal to your core right now,
First,
and you're doing that. And Coral Gables is a wonderful community. They are so appreciative of everything. They're a conservative group of people. Many of them are very conservative. I think your people have told you that. Mm. And there's some shows that have been produced at Gables Stage that wouldn't really appeal to my audiences, nor would the city of Coral Gables, my landlord, be happy.
Yeah.
I'd be placing that information on the marquee. So you have to, but they're great plays.
Yeah. And that's the role of Gables Stage.
Coral Gables is a great community. I think they're embracing you. You've got partnerships with the right group. You've got a partnership with me anytime you want it, okay?
Well, I have to say that when I was having a low day last week of like, what have I gotten us into? My gosh, certainly I'm smarter than this. I thought, a real high point has been the support that I've found within my own theater community, which isn't even mine yet, but everybody's been really encouraging, and I just keep thinking, my God, it really does take a village. It really does, especially now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now. I had a low day yesterday when I spent 10 hours on a grant. It was a very low day at the end of the day.
Yeah, I had a low day today when we did not receive a grant.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's all...
Yeah, it's everything in theater. If you do it right, you have to do it the right way for tomorrow. It's not just to fill today.
Exactly.
If you just fill today, you're just never going to have it tomorrow. Exactly. Oh, look at that philosophy.
No, it's true. And the highs are high and the lows are low.
Well, it's a roller coaster. I'm a positive individual.
Yes,
so
I see that.
I never let it get too low. Although yesterday I really wanted to eat a lot about 6 o'clock at night and have my Grey Goose. And it was a long day. But I'm saying you can't let it get too low. And you can't let the people around you, because you're dealing in the arts and with very sensitive people, very creative people. You might be one of those creative people, but you seem to have a balance with the leadership of business too, which is interesting and unique.
Yeah.
But people are creative, and everybody has a set path of how they see something being done.
Yeah.
And you want to be sensitive to everybody's needs when you work with a big team.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's difficult. I call myself the taskmaster of the theater.
Yeah.
Because my team is as important to this theater as I am to it.
Yes.
We all are important. If anybody would not be doing what they're doing now today, we wouldn't have it. We are planning for the next season.
Tell me about it. Yes.
But it's there has to be somebody who has some stability, who thinks futuristically.
Yeah, who's driving the car.
And who's focused. Yeah. You have to hold that focus. And so that's the thing. So I'm sorry you didn't get your grant, but you will tomorrow, and you'll learn about that grant and what they want.
Yeah. And in the meantime, we just keep trucking. What is the percentage load on each side between contributed and earned for Actors Playhouse?
Okay, earned income is about, I'd say about 55% if you include tuitions and rentals and theater tickets.
Got it.
And the rest is
pretty good. Half and half.
Yeah,
almost.
It is. It's pretty good. It's always been that way on normal years. Mm-hmm. Our highest capacity has been about 85% in our 600-seat theater, but that's for our really hit shows, and that could not necessarily be on a Wednesday, Thursday night. But a 600-seat theater is even a larger theater space that people are building now for regional theaters. 400, 450 is the right size for a regional theater. Yeah. And we're in a community of high-density theater activity. I mean, ours says theater's 1,250 seats. No, 2,500 seats. And I don't know how the heck they ever fill those seats.
Right.
But I could tell you that It's a challenge.
Yeah, of course.
But we've been very fortunate. But listen, we're in our 34th season.
Yeah.
You know, if we haven't gotten to sustain ourselves like this at this point for so long, you know, and we're working really hard to grow our organization and grow an endowment and grow our succession plan and staffing. We've all been together for all these years.
Right.
As a leader of this organization, I would be doing the wrong thing if I didn't look at who could replace me and who could replace the person under me as we grow. And I can't get to that point right now. Every time I try to, something else happens. It's hurricane. And I still love it. But I do know what my job is, and I'm going to make sure it happens because a lot of people have put a lot of money and thought process and dedication to this organization, and my job is to make sure that it succeeds itself.
Exactly.
I'm going to do it.
I just started saying it like as clearly as I could that you know, to subscribe, it means that you're giving the theater company what it needs on the front end of a season to produce another year of high quality professional theater.
Very well put.
Right? And people, you know, an audience who's just shelling out, writing checks for hundreds of dollars are just thinking, oh, it's for, you know, 7 plays or 4 plays or whatever. But from the theater company's perspective, that's extremely valuable income because it's before we produce. And so much, if not, I don't know, 90% of the resources needed happen before the audience gets there, sometimes well before.
You have to hire the set designers and advance it. You've got to send your director to New York and rent rehearsal halls and deal with everything. I mean, it's a very license the shows. Big shows that you have, you can't license them with just a contract. You've got to outlay $5,000 and $10,000.
That's right, exactly.
It's just really a very big business. That's why it's called show business. It's a big operation. But that was a hard thing. That was a hard thing for me to go through that.
Thanks for spending time with me this morning.
Here, cheers.
Cheers.
And it's really just coffee from La Crema.
It is, with a little whiskey. Mine.
Oh, listen, I'll take some. You have some more?